All right, welcome in week 5 here of the college football season. Kind of hard to believe, but yes, that is where we're at. It's a college football kickoff show here, powered by WagerTalk.com. We got a game tonight. We've got a couple of games tomorrow night, and of course, we're going to focus on some of these big games here to get you going. And as always, if you're watching us live here on Wager Talk, go ahead and drop any questions you have in some of these games as we welcome in our Thursday crew here. Little guest appearance by the one and only Bryan Power, fresh off the morning wager. He's hanging out, as is DM Drew Martin in the house, and Mr. Rob Veno ready to roll here, gentlemen, on this. Kind of hard to believe, again, still a week 5 is what we're dealing with here in college football, and it starts tonight, Rob Veno, which is where we're going to start with you, my man, as a game nobody asked for, and yet we've got it. Army taking on Temple, kind of like watching paint dry, although, I don't know, Temple has been much better since they made the quarterback switch here. Are they getting too many points? What do you think we're looking at here tonight?
Well, I think whenever you have an Army game, you start with, can the other side stop the run? And the answer for Temple is no, right? It's a bottom tier FBS rush defense, ranked 112, allowing about 221 a game, guys. 178. It's not skewed either because they've allowed 178 or better in every single game. The 178 came last week to spread-oriented Utah State. Utah State almost ran for 6 a carry against this defense. So, 184 to Coastal Carolina. Tim Beck's boring offense, 220 to Oklahoma, had to bench their quarterback. All spread teams. I think the true comp game for the Temple run defense is the Navy game. Navy comes at them with their new hybrid wing T attack, goes for 297 on 51 carries, almost 6 again per rush. Temple trails in that game 38-3 after 3 quarters. Gave up huge touchdown runs of 62 and 65 yards in that contest. So it doesn't bode well when you're going to play Army. There are some suggestions out there that perhaps because Temple's already seen the option this season, that's going to help. But I beg to differ because those stat lines and those game outcomes, those game logs show you that they're just a poor rush defense. The top 3 ball carriers in Army's offense, QB Bryson Daly's been around a while, runs it really well. Got a slot back by the name of Noah Short. How about averaging 13.3 yards per carry? Doesn't run it often because he's kind of a back receiver in that offense, but 13.3 a carry. Temple's probably going to get hurt by a lot of 20-plus yard plays in this game. Let's add to their woes here, Joe. Army's converting 58.3% of their third downs. Almost 60% of the time they make third down conversions. And when they're doing that, you're not seeing the ball ever. That's the 4th best rate in the country. And to cap it off, Army's only lost 1 fumble in 170 rush attempts. So once they get the ball, it's like glue. It sticks to them. And then they get in the red zone 13 times this year. You're trying to cover 12.5 with a team that gets into the red zone. 12 touchdowns in 13 red zone attempts. 92% of the time they score TDs. That's good when you're laying big points like that. Joe, you mentioned the quarterback here, Evan Simon. That's Temple's counter to this whole thing. Let's wing the ball around with Evan Simon. His 2 starts have been pretty promising, completing 65.5% of his passes, 7 TDs, just 1 INT. Scored 20 against Coastal Carolina, then came back and scored a bunch against Utah State last week. But still 6 possessions for Temple were 3 and outs against Utah State in that game. And the problem here for Temple is going to be that Army, usually you can say, well, Army can't defend the pass. They're too slow. Our receivers can run right past them. They're 25th in the country in pass defense, in total defense, and they're 48th in pass defense, which coincidentally ranks right in between 2 Temple opponents already, Coastal Carolina and Oklahoma. This pass defense actually statistically is better than Oklahoma's. So I would say this. I think that when you add in that factor that Temple's minus 10 in turnover margin, I mean, when you do get the ball, you can't turn it over against Army. 30 possessions, 4 Temple games, 30 possessions, punts or turnovers. I don't know, Joe. I mean, Army went to Boca Raton earlier this year. They beat Florida Atlantic by 17. Florida Atlantic, in my mind, is a step ahead of Temple. So I'd go ahead and lay the 12.5 with Army here.
Oh, laying the 12.5 with Army. I don't know what their fascination with scheduling teams named after an owl, but that appears to be what they're doing. I learned that, and I'll never say this ever again, from Bryan Power earlier today on the Morning Wager. And if you ever ask me to admit that again, I will scrub this tape and this network altogether. But good stuff, Rob. That game is coming out here tonight. And, of course, we got a couple of games tomorrow night, including the U, but we want to focus on a game that's not the U, the other game in the Big Ten, in fact, tomorrow night with Rutgers at home taking on Washington, newly minted Washington now. Welcome to the Big Ten here. But Rutgers off a nice road win, upset road win there, Bryan Power, against Va Tech, who is slowly becoming the most disappointing team to a lot of people who bet them preseason, thought maybe they might be a sleeper in the ACC. Well, they're sleeping, all right. Don't know if they'll wake up here at all, but Rutgers laying a field goal, maybe 2.5 right now in this one. How do you see this one tomorrow night?
Yeah, not only, by the way, Joe, did I tell everyone about the Owls thing with Army, but I also advocated that the Braves and Mets conspire to cheat on the last day of the regular season. You could check that out here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. Morning Wager, me and Mark Zeno, every single Monday through Friday. But Rutgers and Washington, what do we do here? Washington, Joe, you mentioned it was a strong Big Ten debut for the Huskies against Northwestern. The very odd final score of 24-5. Well, you give up 5 points only. How'd you do it? Well, probably with defense. Yes, the Washington defense held Northwestern to just 112 total yards. You take away the first half against Wazoo. Joe, this Washington defense has allowed just 24 total points in the other 14 quarters this season. However, let's put up a few asterisks for that Washington win last week. Number one, Northwestern was missing its leading rusher. Number two, they had 2 interceptions in the game. And also, Northwestern had a couple goal-to-goes against the Washington defense and had only 3 points. Settled for a field goal, obviously, in one, turned it over on downs on the other. Now, something I am very interested, I think a lot of us are interested to see in the Big Ten this year, is these 4 new teams from out west. How are they going to do when they come east and play? So far, we have only one data point, and it was last week. And USC lost outright to a Michigan team that was basically running a service academy style offense. So I don't know if that applies much there. Again, it's just one data point, but I'm very interested to see all year, Joe, how USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon perform when they have to cross the Mississippi. And this Rutgers team is very good this year. They're 3-0. They should have beaten Va Tech by more. They were up 23-7 after 3 quarters last week, kind of screwed around, let Va Tech back in the game, 2 missed field goals. They turn it over twice inside the Hokies' 5-yard line, a fumble, and on downs. The key with this Rutgers team, what people need to watch, it might not be the most exciting thing in the world, Joe. Their offensive line is tremendous. Not a lot of negative. They pave the way for the running game. They protect the quarterback. They're not getting behind the chains. That is key. It's not going to make my card, but I would say a slight lean to the team from Piscataway on Friday night. Rutgers, if you can find a 2.5, that is what I would do. Friday night lights.
All right, leaning towards Rutgers in that one. Again, that's Friday night, Army Temple tonight, and then we start getting into Saturday's card, and nobody better to help us break down the SEC than one Drew Martin in the house, ready to roll. And we got an interesting one here, although it's going to take a little time to say SEC and Oklahoma in the same breath there, Drew, but I think we're starting to come around. They have an interesting game against your boys from Auburn, who are they on their 5th quarterback? I'm not sure, but it's not like OU has got a great quarterback situation or a great room either right now. I think they're going with the true freshman as well. No more Jackson Arnold. The money has been coming in on your boys. Auburn, I saw this 4.5. I'm seeing 2s now. What gives with the Auburn-Oklahoma game coming up here, Drew?
Yeah, Joe, this is a wild handicap, no doubt about it. And yeah, you bring up, talking Auburn here. I guess I'm our resident Auburn Tigers handicapper. I'm getting it on the show. I don't mind it whatsoever. Hey, you spend 5 years in Auburn, Alabama, you learn a couple things. I'll tell you this, Joe. Betting Auburn and just being around the program, when you're really down on them, sometimes they turn around, and when it's going well, sometimes that's not the best time to bet on them. Well, this offense has looked miserable, man. I mean, you bring up the fact, Peyton Thorne threw 4 picks versus Cal 2 weeks ago. Then they bring in the freshman Hank Brown. He throws 3 picks in the first half last week against Arkansas. I watched pretty much every play of that game. It was one of those where Auburn outgained Arkansas by 100 yards, yet lose the game. They've had now 5 turnovers in each of the last 2 weeks. So this offense, it's almost one of those things, just hand the ball off and play defense. You'd probably be a lot better off as the Auburn Tigers. Now they're at home, they're catching points. That's usually a good thing on the Plains. And they're up against an Oklahoma team here that was held to 222 yards of total offense last week against Tennessee. And you mentioned the fact they got a true freshman on the road. It's a tough place to play. I will say this, the fan base is still excited. I think there is some reason for optimism with Auburn. If they don't turn the ball over, they could be a good bet. But the problem is, you got to go with on the field. They're 6-19 versus power conference teams. I mean, come on. The last 25 games, you've won 6 of them. They also got the next 3 against ranked SEC teams. So this is a tough time to be betting on Auburn. It really is. It could be a buy low moment. Instead, Joe, hey, I've said a lot about the offense here and a lot of it negative. We get a 45 in the hook as the total. Both of these defenses have yet to let up more than 25 points in any game this season, and both offenses have struggled. Joe, I wouldn't be surprised if this is like 14-13, a just slug it out defensive battle. I don't think we get to the mid 40s here, Joe. I like under in Oklahoma and Auburn.
Ooh, going under in OU and Auburn there. I'm kind of with you. I know a couple of questions in the chat room for those of you joining us live. Random Actions 18, is Jackson Arnold playing? Well, he's not starting. I know that announcement was made. Whether or not he sees action in the game, I think remains to be seen. If it ain't working in the first half, I can guarantee you they're probably going to swing him back in at some particular point there. It has not been going well for OU, but like Drew said, that is a brutal place to play there. All right, so we've got those 3 games out of the way. We've got a couple of games coming up that are going to be featured games, top 25 teams in action going out. We're going to do them roundtable style. And of course, as always, guys, if you have any questions about some games on the card here in this week 5 slate, drop them in the chat. If you're watching on, or if you're rewatching the replay here, go ahead, drop those questions in the comment section, and we will no doubt get back to you and let you know our thoughts on any of those games. But the first game up we're going to concentrate on is, oh boy, I got to sit here through this. I got to hear these 3 guys rip apart Oklahoma State. This is going to be fun. So we are going to have Oklahoma State taking on K-State. I already had to deal with Kelly Stewart on Bet On It yesterday with this with her garbage Kansas State Wildcats. But we will switch it over to Rob Veno because I have no doubt that Rob Veno will be siding with the real team in this one here, the Oklahoma State Cowboys, I am sure. I would have liked one of these teams to have won last week, Rob, because then it would have made the bet pretty simple in this one, but they both lost in embarrassing fashion, so here we are. It looks like early money on Oklahoma State. I'm still seeing 5 right now. It was as low as 4.5, Vino. So what are we doing with Oklahoma State and Kansas State here on Saturday?
Well, I mean, knee-jerk reaction would be we're not playing Oklahoma State and we'll try Kansas State in a redemption game off of last week's. But I don't know, Joe. I look the other way. Obviously, I love to look at some totals, and we'll look at one here. And it'll include a little bit of analysis of your quarterback, old Backfoot Bowman, who we talked about last week. He found his way right to the bench last week. hopefully a little
Don't make
bounce back
fun
here.
of the senior citizens, Vino. Don't make fun of the senior citizens, damn it.
7-year quarterback plan is a wonderful thing, Joe. K-State, I was just looking from a K-State point of view, Joe. I still think that nationally, in these betting markets, their scoring ability is still so underrated, and I think it helps that they only got to 9 last week. K-State's been a 30-plus point offensive machine, 14-4, 30-plus points in their since the start of last season. That's 18 games. At home, the number's even better. They've scored 31 points or more in every home game since last year. 7 of those, they put up 40-plus. I think the potential exists for another copy of that against this Oklahoma State defense. Oklahoma State's defensive numbers the last couple of weeks look halfway decent because, they play a Utah freshman backup, Zach Wilson's little brother, first start on the road as a freshman. And, of course, Tulsa's an offensive mess right now, so I don't know if we're going to count those 2 defensive performances from Oklahoma State. I think the comp game, and I love my comp games, is Arkansas. Taylon Green, dual-threat quarterback like Avery Johnson, absolutely went berserk against this Oklahoma State defense. Threw for 415 yards, 26 of 45, and a TD. Ran for 104 more. Arkansas in that game put up 648 yards, 232 on the ground, 416 through the air, averaged 9 yards per play. That's crazy. But I do think that Avery Johnson and Kansas State might not find a way to 9 yards of play, but they're going to score and they're going to move the football on this team. Now, if we want to get to over, which, by the way, guys, has been bet up from 52 to 55.5. Congratulations to those who ran in and got the 52s. What it means from an over betting standpoint is, you probably lost 54 and 55 being the most important one. That's a more common number between 53, 54, and 55. So now you have to find your way to 56. We'll need some Oklahoma State offense, which has been sporadic. I mean, let's give them their credit. 44, 39, and 45 points in their first 3 games. Last week, Bowman ran into Kyle Whittingham's defense and couldn't do much about it. They only scored 19. But it's the Ollie Gordon story here, right, Joe? I mean, when are we going to get Ollie Gordon going? At some point in time, he's got to be a guy that can run the football behind that offensive line. They haven't done him a lot of favors, but it's what makes Oklahoma State's offense so tough to defend because you have to throw 8 in the box to make sure Gordon doesn't get going. And then, of course, Bowman and his receivers can do the rest from there. I think we probably get back to a little bit of the norm here for Oklahoma State. I got too much trust in Gundy as a play caller. Obviously, it's a conference game here, and it means a lot to both sides. Kansas State's going to get theirs. I think OSU is good for 24 in this game, 23, 24, even if it's in a losing effort, which it probably will be. But that puts me in a pretty good spot to get over 55.5. So that's the way I'm looking here, over 55.5.
Over 55.5 here, expecting there to be some points. And that's does not surprise me at all there because there probably is going to be some points in this game, Vino. And Ollie Gordon is the big question. When? That's an entire returning, Rob Vino. I mean, the entire returning offensive line. When are they going to get off? At some particular point, it would be nice to see, but we'll see if they can get it done against K-State here. That brings us, of course, to Bryan Power, unfortunately. And Bryan, we're going to have to hear what you have to say about this. There will be a time limit if in fact, any of this is pro K-State. So have at it, man. K-State, Oklahoma State. How in the world are you betting this game?
Joe Ranieri, in your darkest hour, you can always feel free to turn to your good friend Bryan Power here. Now, I have read a lot of support for the Kansas State side in this battle of ranked Big 12 rivals, and the argument seems, Joe, to be based on 2 things. 1, home field advantage, and 2, the fact that last week's results were kind of misleading for both these teams, right? Okay, Oklahoma State loses 22-19 at home to Utah. Kansas State loses 38-9 at BYU. Okay, we all know Oklahoma State was down big going to the 4th quarter. They made it close in garbage time, while Kansas State actually outgained BYU by a fairly substantial margin, 126 yards to be exact. But there were a lot of fluke plays, 2 non-offensive touchdowns. BYU got 2 touchdowns off after interceptions. They had short fields. So, okay, yes, they were misleading finals. And yes, whomever has hosted this particular Big 12 rivalry is on a 6-0 ATS and 5-1 straight up run. But Joe Ranieri, I cannot get to this number that Kansas State is being favored at. I have this game as a toss-up. And so for Kansas State, it was 6 at one point, and to be laying 5, it's too many points in my opinion. Let's not forget what happened last year. Oklahoma State, in Stillwater admittedly, they win outright. I don't think these teams have changed much year over year in terms of the gap. Gundy has been great as an away dog the last 6 seasons, 9-5 against the number. And you referenced Kelly Stewart. I had a conversation with her on Last Call on Saturday, and I expressed some concern about this Kansas State offense. I had the Wildcats as a 4% best bet against Arizona, but I watched the game and I'm looking at the offense. It was just Avery Johnson scrambling for first downs. And I said to her, I'm like, is that a sustainable blueprint for success? I don't think so. And lo and behold, what did Johnson do last week? He had 11 carries for 74 yards and completed only 15 of his 28 passes for 130. Yes, Kansas State, it was a misleading final score against BYU last week. But you know what? A few weeks ago at Tulane, Joe, they were lucky to win. So give me the points with Oklahoma State. You compare, Rob was comparing games a couple weeks ago, and obviously the line would be different now. Kansas State closed -7 against Arizona. You compare that to this line, come on. Oklahoma State is not only 2 point. Arizona is not a good football team at all. So I like the points with the pokes. And Joe, it is a client selection.
I got to tell you, that might have been one of the most spot-on breakdowns I think I have ever heard from you, Bryan Power. That is outstanding. We might actually let you back on the show, but it really all depends on what your next selection is going to be in the game coming up, which will be Notre Dame and Louisville. In the meantime, Drew Martin from the SEC to the Big 12 here, my friend. You have no doubt heard Oklahoma State, Kansas State, the argument for both. I know on a number of texts that I got from Kelly reminding me the record of Kleinman after an embarrassing loss. And boy, that was an embarrassing loss against BYU. They just did not show up. This is a team that usually bounces back pretty well. Gundy for years has been a guy getting points on the road as a dog. He's been a guy that you want to back. So is this closer to a toss-up in your opinion, or do you think K-State is the right side here?
Sure, Joe. I mean, you bring up the Big 12 here. I'm starting to think this is setting up to be a heck of a finish in this conference. I'm excited about it, man. You look top to bottom, there is a lot of competition going to happen as this season goes on. And I'm starting to feel like it plays out, Joe, where it's who's going to be playing against the Utah Utes. That's how I'm thinking this kind of plays out. And that kind of puts me in a situation where Oklahoma State, the Cowboys just played Utah, in my opinion, top to bottom of the roster, likely the most talented team in this Big 12 conference. And it almost puts me in a position where I'm going to be looking to bet on the Cowboys because of that. I mean, they did come back. I guess it was garbage time. But if they do that same thing this week, they're going to fall in that number, -5. I mean, I thought both Veno and Bryan Power brought up good points here. And that wild stat sheet with the Kansas State game last week, by the way, there was a bunch of them on last Saturday's card. I mean, you bring up that TCU, SMU game, the Kansas State, BYU, talk about non-offensive touchdowns and affecting the game. There was 2 of them, over 120 yards outgaining. Kansas State outgained BYU, yet lose by 30 points. I mean, the stat sheet would tell you now might be a good time to jump on Kansas State. But I don't love this number. I really don't. I could see that back door being open. I think this Oklahoma State offense kind of rides what they did in the fourth quarter against a very good Utah team. And I wouldn't be surprised at all, guys, if they slip through the back door and even have a possibility to win this game outright. So I don't think it's a good time to go up against Oklahoma State, Joe. And I would look towards that side in this one.
Well, there you have it. If I'm not mistaken, that would be all 4 of us on Oklahoma State. And Rob Veno, you know exactly what we need to do now. Since we all seem to agree that Oklahoma State is the right side, we get a second mortgage and back K-State. That's how it works, very simply. Okay, so we've got one game in the books here, round table style. We're going to check in on one final game coming up this week that we think has a little bit of juice. And I think it's going to be a fascinating game with Louisville getting ready to take on Notre Dame here. And boy, the kid Rourke in Jeff Brom's offense has been nothing short of phenomenal here. And man, I'm hearing a lot of comparisons. Offensively, Louisville, very good. The problem is, and we'll take it back to you, Rob Veno, nobody talks about how good Louisville's defense has been. This is a very good defensive team here. I kind of looked at the total, which I thought maybe that was the direction you'd be heading in this one. But they can't run the ball, Louisville, Rob. That's the problem. And if you can't run on Notre Dame, they're going to run on you. And that's going to make it very difficult for you to become one-dimensional against that defense in Notre Dame with another revenge spot. It's another one of these revenge spots on the card here, Veno. So what do you do here with Louisville heading, almost getting a touchdown? I'm 6.5 right now in this game coming up. Oh, this is the part of the show where we mime you, Veno, I think. Wait a minute.
Oh,
there we go.
Never
there we
happens
go.
to
Good
me.
to go.
God forbid I don't let my voice be heard. That's, Notre Dame might be getting right offensively here. And the only reason I say that is because I thought, I had Clemson and Notre Dame in the same category. Still can't play any offense. Clemson had one good offensive breakout game. And you're like, okay, show it to me again, Clemson. You know what they did? They showed it to you again against NC State. And perhaps Notre Dame is in that same group. Looked lousy offensively. The Texas A&M game, be what it was. They got out of there with the win, but it wasn't because of their offense. And they come back against Purdue and absolutely go berserk with 66 points. Now they get Louisville, which, yes, it's a better defense. But I like your point, Joe, about this team. They can't run. Listen, these two guys here analyzing games with me, Bryan and Drew, they both talked about misleading finals last week. Louisville did nothing to get to 31 points. What they did does not correlate to 31 points. Georgia Tech gains 410 yards against this team. Louisville only 326. Louisville couldn't run, as you mentioned, Joe. And Tyler Shook, 13 of 19. I mean, it's no great shakes there out of this guy. So how's he going to fare? If that's all they can do at home against Georgia Tech's defense, what are they going to do in South Bend against Notre Dame's defense? I'd say it's going to be a tough trip. You mentioned the revenge. I think that's another part of the tough trip here. Notre Dame focused and ready to go here. So the Louisville offense, I think, as much as I love Jeff Brom, as much as I love his ability to call plays and find weaknesses, Notre Dame is not a defense with a lot of weaknesses. This is going to be very interesting to see how Louisville fares against them. Other side of the coin, can Notre Dame do enough offensively to crack this Louisville defense, which has, by ACC standards, been top tier inside their conference since the start of last year? It's really what carried them last year, right? The offense didn't carry them last year. They had terrible quarterback play out of Jack Plummer, still found their way to the ACC championship game this year, playing pretty well on the defensive side. But I think Notre Dame's too powerful at the line of scrimmage, Joe. I'm willing to say that, or at least willing to compare Notre Dame with Clemson in the fact that I think there's a little bit of an offensive resurgence going on here. I think they can find their way to 27, 30 points, and that's probably enough to cover this game against Louisville. So I'm on the Notre Dame side here. I think revenge, again, does help, but I just think Louisville might be a tad overrated at this point in time. And I say that reluctantly because I do like Jeff Brom coach teams, but that offense isn't showing me all that much, especially last week. You're supposed to roll Georgia Tech's defense. Remember, Syracuse gained 515 total yardage against that team. And then, Georgia Tech comes in here and rolls Louisville's defense. So give me Notre Dame minus the points.
Yeah, and if you remember too, Veno, it last year, they ended up getting into the head of another washed-up ACC quarterback that somehow transfers to Notre Dame. And if I'm not mistaken, Riley Leonard last year against Louisville also got boat raced by them. So this is going to be an interesting one here, just simply because there seems to be a trend happening here, Bryan Power, where you get these second-tier ACC quarterbacks go to Notre Dame. a la Hartman, who looked terrible against Louisville last year. He basically handed them the game. And now you got Riley Leonard, who couldn't beat Louisville Duke last year, but now he's at Notre Dame. So is there a correlation here? Do you trust Notre Dame to get this done? Or do you think Louisville, some teams you just can't beat? Is Louisville that team for Notre Dame?
Yeah, you just go back to last year. Again, misleading finals. Notre Dame turned it over 5 times in that game. Lost to Louisville. And I believe that snapped like a 30-game win streak Notre Dame had against ACC teams, if memory serves me correct. So, history says, Notre Dame handles the ACC pretty well, not last year. I think they bounce back here. Key to this handicap, we have to mention this, is the Louisville injury situation, Joe. They could be down 2 receivers and a running back and their top cornerback. That seems pretty key to me. Other than that, they're very healthy going into this ranked versus ranked matchup. So Jaden Thompson is for sure done for the season. Lacey, who was their key transfer, he led the Sun Belt receiving yards last year. He has not played. He had a collarbone injury over the summer. They said he's close. He's going to be a game-time decision, but the running back is out for a couple weeks. And their stud cornerback is also unlikely to play, Quincy Riley. So that's a lot of key pieces missing for a Louisville team that, as Rob put out, probably didn't deserve to win against Georgia Tech last week. Got outgained 410 to 326, only 57 yards rushing on the offensive end. The defense had 0 sacks. Consider this, guys. They win. It took 2 non-offensive scores to win that game by 12 at home. And Louisville was off a bye. So I don't think it was I think it was more about Georgia Tech not getting the job done than what Louisville did. You look at the Notre Dame side. I'm going to hype this show until December. I'm sorry. I had Northern Illinois plus 28 in that game. We're going to keep talking about that week after week on the show. Since then, though, Notre Dame, they've looked pretty good, right? They blew out both Purdue and Miami of Ohio. I know the Boo Birds were out last week. The Irish got off to another slow start, but they ran for 257. So to me, the key in this game is the Louisville injuries, and I think Notre Dame controls the trenches in South Bend. Ranked versus ranked, I know I went against it in our last game by taking the underdog, but typically it's the favorite that covers in ranked to ranked, 57% ATS since 2020. So lean to the Irish here, minus the points. Minus 6.5 would be ideal, obviously, instead of 7.
It's interesting because it does feel like this is going to be one of those situations where Notre Dame wins, they're going to win big. If Louisville wins, it feels like Louisville is just going to stay within this number, and it's going to be one of those last-second type of games here, which means they may not get the cover, Drew, because it is, as we're sitting here, right, 6.5, just under a touchdown. And if you like Notre Dame, I wouldn't be afraid of laying that 6.5. But if you don't trust Notre Dame, and who the hell can actually fault anybody for not trusting Notre Dame in a spot like this? Which side do you lie on, or do you even go total? Do you think this is all about the defenses in this game?
No, Joe, I would go side in this one. I mean, in front of touchdown, Jesus, I like the Irish here. I really do. And I would go back to, I think, with what Rob kind of echoed there in the Louisville Georgia Tech game. As a person that had the Yellow Jackets plus the 10 in the hook, they go down by 12, like Brian talked about, a fumble recovered for a touchdown, a blocked field goal returned for a touchdown. Talk about misleading scores there. That's one that kind of burned you still, 6 days later. So I'm not a believer in this Louisville team. I'm really not, Joe. I mean, I know they're 3-0 straight up, 3-0 against the spread. I think some of that's misleading. They really haven't played a tough schedule at all. And Notre Dame, yes, they have been up and down, no doubt about it. Losing to Northern Illinois, beating another MAC team, boat racing Purdue. I think they get after this one at home. Primetime game here. It's Louisville's first road trip as well. I don't like that in college football. So -6 in the hook. I think Notre Dame wins by 2 touchdowns, if not more, in this one, Joe.
Yep, 2 touchdowns. It just feels like if Notre Dame's don't be worried of laying the points here. I know Desmond Castro putting all in on Notre Dame in this one to get the job done. You don't have to worry about the money line. Lay the points, Desmond. If Notre Dame wins, they're going to win big here. We all seem to think that Louisville may be taking a step back. I don't like teams that can't run on the road, and Louisville can't run. So I don't know how you're going to beat that defense of Notre Dame. We do have some questions coming in. Before we get to them, I do want to remind folks, if you have not taken advantage of the buy 90, get 30, the all-access package for any one of your favorite handicappers right now at WagerTalk.com, I would definitely take advantage of it. That's 4 months of all access heading into the most beautiful time of the year, postseason baseball, college football, NFL, the NBA will be here, not to mention the NHL is already playing, I don't even want to say, what is it, preseason games or whatever the hell they're doing in the NHL. That'll be back. Oh, yeah. And I think this will even cover college basketball at some point here, as that will be here before we know it. 4 months of all access right now. Buy 90, get 30 free. No better way to build that bankroll and get it rolling, guys, right now than visiting WagerTalk.com and take advantage. All three of these guys locked and loaded for Week 5 of the college football season, not to mention Week 4 of the NFL season. And, of course, all three of these guys looking at Major League Baseball postseason, and no doubt that Veno is dabbling in the WNBA. If I know this man, I promise you there are going to be WNBA plays up and available, ready at his page here, as they are already on to the second round of the playoffs there in the WNBA. All right, we're going to start here with a question, and I'm going to go to you, BP, because I think it's interesting. People are questioning why Baylor is a favorite this weekend. Why is Baylor a favorite this weekend? -3. Actually, I'm seeing 3.5s right now. Taking on BYU. Are you in agreement with the line? It does feel like this is a trendy dog right now, BYU, off of that win against Kansas State. Now got to go to Baylor, who sucked against Colorado and absolutely choked it away from somebody that had Baylor in that game. That was absolutely disgusting. But what do you think about Baylor's chances of bouncing back? The market loves them. There's some questions as to whether or not they should be more than a field goal favorite.
Yeah, I broke this game, Joe, down on Wager Talk today on Monday. I like Baylor here. It is a great bounce back spot. You talk about the Heartbreak Hotel loss to Colorado last week. Shades of Michael Westbrook shocking the world 30 years ago in the big house there for Colorado. It was a game the Bears led most of the way, right? They were up 2 touchdowns at one point. They lose in OT. And I believe, and you know how I like I like situational handicapping, Joe. I believe this is the first time we've got an unranked team favored against a top 25 opponent. Did anyone in their right mind outside of Provo, Utah, think that BYU would be in the top 25 this year? There is no way anyone thought that was going to happen. This was a team pegged to finish near the bottom of the Big 12, in fact. But here they are, 4-0 straight up and against the spread. We talked about their win over Kansas State earlier, kind of how phony it was, that final score. They were outgained by 126 yards, averaged only 5.6 yards on 48 plays, yet they win by 29 points, Joe. You do not see that very often. And the quarterback for BYU, he makes a lot of turnover-worthy throws. I think the turnover bug goes against BYU this week. There's a lot of trends that I talked about earlier in the week. That when teams are outgained by 120 or more and are now an away dog, you fade. So Baylor, I believe, is absolutely the right side in this one.
Ooh, all right. Big agreement with the Baylor Bears there. Shout out to those of you joining us live here on the College Football Kickoff Show. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. We'd certainly appreciate it. Drop those questions in the chat if you have a game that you are interested in seeing what these guys have to say. And if you're watching it on the replay, drop it in the comment section. We monitor the comment section all day long, so we'll get you the answers you are looking for. Shout out to Instagram and TikTok, by the way, hanging out with us here today. And Drew, you knew the question was coming at some point. It was just a matter of when it was going to come. And there is a big question about the U, Drew. The U in the house, taking on Vatech tomorrow. Also, a lot of questions, Drew, about whether can Miami be trusted? I mean, it's 18 now, Drew, 18, 19, somewhere in there. I've seen it between 18 and 20. Vatech is not good. I think we overvalued them. But doesn't this feel like a scorched earth Cristobal and Miami team this year? It feels like they have no intention of any letdown or basically taking their foot off the throats of anybody. Are you getting that feeling with this team as well?
I absolutely am, Joe. I saw this team in person up against the Gators. I was on the wrong side of that. And I to tell you the truth, it was one of those games you can move around in the fourth quarter because the Gator faithful was leaving the stadium. And they look good. They look big up front. They got Cam Ward behind it, guys. This roster top to bottom, I don't want to say the best in college football, but if there's better out there, maybe Georgia, Alabama, one of those teams, I don't know that they're going to look all that much better coming off the bus than the Miami Hurricanes, guys. This team is good up front. They got the Cristobal, the former offensive lineman. They got a really good quarterback. They got playmakers on the outside. And like you talked about, Joe, it might be pedal to the metal here. They're making a point. They're trying to get the U back to where they belong. So I'm by no means looking to go up against the Miami Hurricanes, Joe. It is lay it or pass. And if I'm getting involved, it's on the Canes and laying this number.
Yeah, I would not. This year it looks different, smells different, tastes different. This is not a even Mario Cristobal, and knock on wood, can't screw this up, I don't think, although anything is possible. Rob Veno, one for you here quick. I didn't reckon it, but Mac Brown is in the chat room. Good old Mac. Glad to see he's in there. He says that on behalf of Tar Heel Nation, he wants to take no responsibility for that shit show on the field last week. We're on the Duke. And no offense, Mac. How much do you trust Mac Brown and North Carolina to get a bounce back spot? I mean, that was terrible against James Madison. Veno, are we team Mac Brown? Do we think bounce back is coming here this week?
It would be hard to recommend any bounce back after what we saw, Joe. Bob Chesney's JMU team came in there, and it was interesting to me to watch college football. That game in particular last week, right, against James Madison, where all the talk in NFL football last year, at least nationally, was two high defenses. There's no big plays. The passing game doesn't go anywhere in NFL right now. And then to watch the amount of drop back vertical home run passes that were thrown in that game by both sides with guys running free was crazy. It's as if North Carolina had never seen a go route, a post route, or anything else. They had a punt blocked, could not stop James Madison whatsoever through the air. They've got issues. And not only where quarterback play was concerned, where they're down to maybe the best choice is Criswell, could end up being the best choice, but it was the third option, and we're only in the fourth or fifth game. So aside from the offensive issues at quarterback that they didn't really solve until maybe last week, they've got defensive problems here. Now, Duke, I'm waiting for the little bit of the breakout here, right? To start the season, their motto was pedal to the metal, go fast. The new OC was going to play fast football. They come out. I'm missing the name now, but the backup quarterback from Texas last year becomes their starter and throws a lot of deep balls in that opening game, misses them all. Probably not familiar enough with his receiving core, but I think as the season goes on, they're going to hit some of those big plays, which I tie right back to what I said earlier. North Carolina victimized by a bunch of big plays through the air. Duke may get them here, but I think if you're looking at North Carolina games from here on out, you probably want to be looking at totals, Joe. I mean, I'm not one that's, shying away from betting overs. North Carolina, to me, looks like an overplay waiting to happen. Remember that on offense, even though they threw the ball vertically a lot last week in chase mode, Omarion Hampton is still a huge threat at running back, so they're really well balanced. I think you probably want to look at over here. I think Duke, and mainly I would say that mainly because I think Duke at some point this season with this fast offense is going to start clicking, and we're going to see Duke start putting up points on a more regular basis.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know how you can sweat out an under in any North Carolina game. That would be just absolutely terrifying. That would be like trying to sweat out an under in UCF in Colorado. Good luck with that one there. Bryan Power, Drew Martin, Rob Veno in the house here. BP, we'll go around the horn here quick. What do you got locked, loaded, ready to roll at your page at WagerTalk?
Yeah, college football complete card for Saturday is up right now, Joe. We've got 4 plays for you. It's been a great start to the football season, no doubt about it. 68% overall in NFL and college. That is number 1 at WagerTalk. Very excited about that. Hoping to keep it going. Last Saturday, Joe, we won our first 5% max bet of the season. Texas Tech gets it done against Arizona State, not to be outdone. NFL is 6-1 the last 2 weeks. Perfect 6-0 year-to-date with sides. The NFL card should be up by this evening. Going to be 3 sides for you on Sunday.
Love it. And Drew, how about you, my man? Locked, loaded, ready to roll. Still got a few Major League Baseball games rolling as well. So what do you got ready for us here today?
Absolutely, Joe. Sweating one out as we speak. 5% max limit NFL up for Sunday. Talk about number one the last year, number 1 the last 4 years in NFL totals, guys. Got the highest rated play going on Sunday, and the Saturday college football card will be locked and loaded by the end of the day. So, big day of football action, big weekend of football action, Joe, and baseball going strong as well, man. So check it out, WagerTalk.com, experts page, Drew Martin.
All right, I love it. And Rob Veno, WNBA. I'll just let me say it because I know it's coming. So talk to me, man. We got the cream of the crop in there. You have been on it. You've been crushing it. Plus college football, NFL, baseball. What's on your page here today at WagerTalk?
Well, let's start with tonight, Joe. Thursday night football up and available at WagerTalk.com right now. Had to play up for a couple of days now. Something I saw that I really like. Last week's NFL treated us really well, 6-3 overall. Picked up almost 9 units, so looking to keep that going here. I want to just really quick here, Joe, because we didn't mention it at all during the show. So let's just mention it on the way out. This hurricane weather. Check it, guys, in cities where it's going to be a factor. Tomorrow night in that Miami game, the total came down because winds are projected to be anywhere from 22 to 27 miles an hour by game time or during the entire game. And as a rule of thumb, in NFL, if the wind is 25 miles an hour, I take it into consideration. NFL arms can usually cut through 20. But in college, I drop it down to 20 miles per hour. Not every arm can cut through 20 mile per hour winds in any situation. So Cam Ward, Chiron drones might be up against it tomorrow night with the heavy winds. Be sure to check for that. Otherwise, yes, WNBA into the semifinals. They start on Sunday, I believe. We will have certainly plays on that. But WNBA has been kind to me all season long. And lastly, if I can shamelessly plug the Every Game on the Board podcast, where me and Drew are both members. Drew hosts. Yes. I have an analyst spot on that. We're going to be doing that this afternoon. So, guys, if you're looking for more information on college football up and down the entire card, wherever you get your podcast, download it. Drew Martin's Every Game on the Board podcast.
Get her done here, guys. Outstanding stuff as always. Bryan Power, Drew Martin, Rob Veno back again tomorrow, 1:15 Eastern time. Teddy Covers will be in the house there. Jesse Schul will be hanging out with us. Brian Leonard will be here. We'll have the whole Friday crew ready to roll and get you all set for 5 more big games in week 5 of the college football season. Until then, though, even you, Bryan Power, is an outstanding job here today, as much as I hate to admit that. That was... Yeah, no, you sucked. All right, guys, enjoy it. We will see you again tomorrow on the College Football Kickoff Show. Enjoy.